Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles. You're watching Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are
tensions in the Korean Peninsula. South Korea successfully test fires a submarine-launched ballistic missile, becoming only the 7th country in the world with advanced technology and raising the prospect of a regional arms race, while North Korea fires 2 ballistic missiles.
I want to thank the people of the city of Houston.
Tropical storm Nicholas rolled knocking out power.
A small cargo plane with 3 crew members on board crashed into a mountain in Indonesia's jungle-clad Papua region.
Citizens of the region say
BC, Maryland, and Virginia communities received aid from INC State.
Ano po yung...
First, tensions in the Korean Peninsula. South Korea successfully test-fired a submarine-launched ballistic missile today, the presidential office said, becoming only the 7th country in the world with the advanced technology. Take a look. Now, the missile was fired underwater from the South's newly commissioned submarine An Chang-ho and flew the planned distance before hitting its target, according to the Blue House. Possessing a submarine-launched ballistic missile, or SLBM, was a very meaningful advance in its deterrent, according to the Blue House, adding it would play a major role in self-reliant national defense and the establishment of peace on the Korean Peninsula going forward. All other countries with proven SLBM capabilities have nuclear weapons of their own.
Now, earlier in the day, the North fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles from South Pyongan province into the sea off its east coast, Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff said in a statement. They flew about 800 kilometers or 500 miles at a maximum altitude of around 60 kilometers. It was Pyongyang's second firing in less than a week after its official Korean Central News Agency reported it had test-fired a new long-range cruise missile over the weekend, calling it a strategic weapon of great significance. Wednesday's launches, both of them in the early afternoon, came shortly after Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi held talks in Seoul with his South Korean counterpart and Moon. Speaking before news of the 2 Koreas' launches emerged, Wang said he hoped that all countries would help peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula, Yonhap News Agency reported.
Meanwhile, envoys for North Korea from Japan, the United States, and South Korea attended a 3-way meeting in Tokyo. Sung King, U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, and No Yoon-duk, South Korea Special Representative for Korean Peninsula Peace and Security Affairs, joined Japan's Director General for Asian and Oceanian Affairs, Takehiro Funakoshi, for a meeting on how to address this latest development with North Korea. Take a look.
And our commitment to security of Japan and the world is stronger than ever. The United States is grateful to the ROC and Japan for their close coordination on the DPRK. And we look forward to continuing that today. Recent developments in the DPRK are a reminder of the importance of close communication and cooperation among our countries.
Pyongyang test-fired a new long-range cruise missile over the weekend, according to state media, with the United States saying the nuclear-armed country was threatening its neighbors and beyond. Pictures in the Rodong Sinmo newspaper on Monday showed a missile exiting one of 5 tubes on a launch vehicle in a ball of flame and a missile in a horizontal flight. Such a weapon would represent a marked advance in North Koreans' weapons technology, according to analysts, better able to avoid defense systems to deliver a warhead across the South or Japan, both of them U.S. allies. Regardless, the missiles represent another lethal component in North Korea's arsenal, which has significantly expanded since 2019, when it resumed major weapons tests.
In other news, China concluded the first multinational peacekeeping exercise on its territory today. Troops from Thailand, Mongolia, and Pakistan joined China's armed forces for the 10-day exercise at the military base in Preshan County in central Henan province. Dubbed Shared Destiny 2021, the exercise demonstrates China's support for the multilateral system centered on the UN's told journalists invited to the base. China's defense spending is the second largest in the world after the US, and tensions have dramatically increased between rival powers as Beijing has poured trillions of yuan into the modernization of its military. But the country has repeatedly sought to allay fears over its military intentions, projecting itself as a peaceful counterpoint to what it calls the bullying, hegemonic behavior of Washington.
Meanwhile, fighter jets practiced landing on a highway in southern Taiwan today as part of an annual live-fire military exercise that simulates defending the island against an invasion by China. On Wednesday morning, various Taiwanese fighter jets, as well as an early warning aircraft, practiced taking off and landing on a provincial highway in Pingtung County. The drill, which was watched by President Tsai Ing-wen, is supposed to hone Taiwanese pilot skills if the island's airstrips are wiped out. Democratic Taiwan lives under constant threat of invasion by Beijing, which claims the island as part of its territory and has vowed to one day seize it by force if necessary. Military tensions have risen to their highest in decades under President Xi Jinping, with China now routinely sending fighter jets and nuclear-capable bombers into Taiwan's air defense zone, and state media regularly publicizing invasion drills. An invasion of Taiwan would be a hugely costly and difficult endeavor, but Beijing has increasingly closed the military gap in recent years, and President Xi has made no secret of his desire to see the island taken.
Meanwhile, Russia and Belarus held joint exercises called Zapad 2021 and has hooked EU neighbors. Around 200,000 soldiers are taking part in the week-long exercises in Russia, Belarus, and the Baltic Sea. The live fire drills will run until Thursday on Russia's and Belarus' western flanks, including areas near NATO and the European Union's borders. Matthew Bolligue, a research fellow at Britain's Chatham House think tank, said the first 3 days of the hot face exercises, launched Friday, focused on defending against a Western attack, with the remaining 4 days devoted to a counter-offensive. According to the New York Post, the exercises are held every 4 years, but this year's drill has been seen as a sign of Russia's support for Belarus and its leader, Alexander Lukashenko, whom the West has ostracized for cracking down on dissent. Forces from Armenia, India, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Mongolia also were due to take part.
The Philippine National Police has not received any report about possible terror attacks in the country amid the warning from the Japan Ministry of Foreign Affairs about potential attacks in Southeast Asia. Let's listen in.
We have not received any report on possible terror attacks as advised by the Japan Foreign Ministry, but this does not mean that we would lower our guard on this matter. Noon pa man ay patuloy ang aming intelligence monitoring, especially after 9/11 attack in the US and the Marawi City incident, at nanatiling maigting ating pagpugnayan sa iba't ibang bansa laban sa terorismo through information sharing and a strategic partnership in dealing with terror groups. Kasama dito ang pagpapalakas ng ugnayan ng inyong kapulisan sa iba't ibang komunidad at stakeholders upang matiyak na hindi tayo malulustan sa anumang plano ng mga teroristang grupo sa anumang lugar sa ating bansa.
Japan's foreign ministry, cited by reports on Monday, warned its citizens in Indonesia, the Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and Myanmar to stay away from religious facilities and crowds after obtaining information that there are increased risks, such as suicide bombing.
A small cargo plane with 3 crew on board crashed into a mountain in Indonesia's jumbo-clad region of Papua. The Twin Otter 300 type aircraft run by local airline Rimban Air was carrying construction material. It lost contact about an hour after departing from Navire Regency, also in Papua. The wreckage of the Twin Otter 300 aircraft was found by locals over 3 hours later near a village in the islands. Images released by the rescue team on Wednesday showed the debris strewn on the jungle floor. Indonesia's fast-growing aviation sector has long been marred by safety concerns, with its airlines once banned from U.S. and European airspace. A Boeing 737-500 operated by Indonesian carrier Sriwijaya Air plunged roughly 10,000 feet in less than a minute before crashing into waters off Jakarta earlier this year, killing 62 people on board. In October 2018, 189 people were killed when a Lion Air Boeing 737 MAX jet crashed near Jakarta.
In other news, Tropical Storm Nicholas crawled past Houston, Texas, knocking out power to more than 450,000 homes. Texas Mayor Sylvester Turner said his city escaped the worst. Take a look.
I want to thank the people in the city of Houston. We've been through this time and time again. And quite frankly, after the Tax Day flood, Memorial Day flood, Hurricane Harvey, Tropical Storm Imelda, I'm just appreciative the good Lord smiled on us, okay? We certainly could use this break in the midst of the pandemic and everything else.
Now, parts of Houston were devastated by Hurricane Harvey in 2017. Perhaps mindful of the damage 4 years earlier, Mayor Turner put the city on high alert Monday, erecting barricades, activating an emergency management office, closing the Houston Ship Channel at its busy port, and warning residents to take extra safety precautions. As of 10 a.m., 1500 GMT, the storm's maximum sustained winds had dipped to 45 miles or 75 kilometers per hour with higher gusts and was expected to dump 5 to 10 inches of rain over the Texas coast and Louisiana, according to the National Hurricane Center. However, the NHC warned that even as Nicholas was forecast to downgrade to a tropical depression, by Tuesday night U.S. time, there could be isolated instances of 20 inches of rainfall in parts of southern Louisiana. Texas is no stranger to hurricanes, but scientists warn that climate change is making the storms more powerful, posing an increasing risk to coastal communities. Coastlines are already suffering from flooding, which has been amplified by rising sea levels.
Back here in the Philippines, the Department of Agriculture reported the damage and losses from Typhoon Jolina to agriculture have soared to 1.36 billion pesos. It has so far affected 49,803 farmers and fishers, with the volume of production loss at 51,177 metric tons and 30,609 hectares of agricultural areas in Central Luzon, Calabar Zone, Mimaropa, the Bicol region, Western Visayas, Central Visayas, and Eastern Visayas. Affected commodities include rice, corn, high-value crops, livestock, fisheries, irrigation, agri-facilities. Now, the DA, through its regional field offices, is further assessing and validating the damage and losses brought by Jolina in the agri-fisheries sector.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Sila ang mga kinikilalang bayaning may mahalagang papel para makamit ang kalayaan at pagbabago sa Pilipinas. Pero sa panahong ito, may mga bagong bayaning nakikipaglaban sa sakit na lumaganap sa buong daigdig, ang COVID-19. Ang ating mga frontliner, gaya ng healthcare workers, mga doktor, nurses, medical technologists, at iba pang health professionals, mga pulis, sundalo, security guards, mga tauhan na nangangalaga sa seguridad at mahahalagang pangangailangan ng bawat komunidad. Ang mga bagong bayani, ating pasalamatan. Kilalanin ang kanilang sakripisyo at serbisyo para sa lahat.
Welcome back to the news. Californians voted overwhelmingly to keep their Democratic governor yesterday or Tuesday, roundly rejecting a Republican attempt to unseat him in a special recall vote spurred by mask mandates and COVID lockdown. Gavin Newsom handily survived votes that could have seen him replaced by a Republican only minority in one of the most liberal parts of the United States. With more than 60% of the votes tallied, NBC that Newsom was set to prevail with the first. The vote had been eagerly watched by politicians across the deeply divided country as a possible indicator of how incumbents listen to doctors instead of angry constituents who stare at the ballot box. Newsom's main opponent was Larry Elder, 69, a right-wing talk radio star who has spoken proudly of his support for ex-President Donald Trump.
Caldor fire continues to scorch northern California. A church in the area gave refuge to those affected there. Here's more from JP Era.
Earlier this week, as the Caldor fire continues to scorch through the northern parts of California, mass evacuations are being ordered in the surrounding areas. Lake Tahoe, a popular destination for summer and winter recreational activities, usually filled with crowds of people, is nearly empty due to the effects of the fire. As the fight against the fire continues to wage, those who are displaced continue to seek refuge. The Caldor fire has burned roughly more than 210,000 acres of land, more than 800 buildings, and have even caused injuries to some people. Although the damage of the fire is apparent and continues to spread, residents of the area are already worried about what will be left behind for them.
We're horrified and we're worried about if we ever go back, if we still have our job, our house, a place to go back into.
A local church in Carson City, the Iglesia ni Cristo, or Church of Christ, have opened their doors as a place of refuge for evacuees of the fire. Sleeping areas, as well as food and supplies, were prepared to assist those who were displaced.
We're all evacuated, and I was the one and fortunate with my family to be here in the Church of Christ, Iglesia ni Cristo Function Hall. And they have an open hand. They accepted us over here along with my family.
Nowadays, it's so really difficult and really hard to strive because of all of these things, especially our friends and brethren in South Lake Tahoe, which they already evacuated here, and really they need full assistance.
With numerous amounts of people evacuating from calamities and COVID cases continuing to rise, there may be moments of uncertainty. But as a community, we form a united front and continue to look forward together. During these times, we ask that we all help one another through these difficulties and continue to take care of yourselves and each other. In Sacramento, JP Era, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Thank you. Anti-vaccine protesters gathered outside of Toronto General Hospital. Here's more from Yolanda Aspiras. Yolanda.
On Monday, September 13th, anti-vaccine protesters gathered outside of Toronto General Hospital to take their stand against vaccine certificates in all 10 provinces in Canada. The group, who calls themselves Canadian Frontline Nurses, has been holding these protests across Canada to fight for the informed consent and medical freedoms and against tyrannical measures in government overreach. On Monday, coordinated protests were held across Canada. Here in Toronto, protests were held outside Toronto General Hospital. Premier Doug Ford called this protest selfish, cowardly, and reckless. NDP leader Andre Horvat said that if people want to protest, that they should come to Queen's Park instead. Toronto City Mayor Jim Tory said that hospital workers deserve our collective thanks, and that people who go to hospitals because they need medical help don't deserve to be harassed or intimidated by protests. The University Health Network expressed their disappointment over the planned protest. Here is their statement. Teams at UHN have worked tirelessly throughout the pandemic, often putting their own well-being aside to protect those most at risk in our community. They have fought to keep the community safe and deserve that same right to safety when coming to work. Demonstrations outside of hospitals not only put healthcare workers and staff at risk, but also patients who come to the hospital for care. In Toronto, Yolanda Aspiras, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
In Sydney, authorities moved to lift curfews for coronavirus hotspots today as infection numbers stabilize and vaccination rates surge. New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian said the 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew for virus hotspots would be lifted from today in what Sydney-siders hope signals the beginning of the end of a long lockdown. Take a look.
Given we've hit that 80% milestone across the state, we're able to lift the curfew in those areas of concern from tonight. We've seen a stabilisation in the last few days, and we don't want to see that trend go the wrong way. We still have work to do. We can all see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we still have work to do.
Almost 3 months after activity in Australia's largest city was frozen by lockdown orders, state authorities announced easing restrictions for the worst-hit areas. Infection rates appear to have plateaued at around 1,300 a day, and 80% of people in Australia's most populous state have received at least one vaccine dose. Berejiklian warned, though, that with 20% of people still completely unvaccinated, hospitalizations and deaths are likely to spike even as Sydney reopens.
The European Union is to donate another 200 million COVID-19 vaccine doses to low-income countries, more than doubling its present pledge, the bloc's chief said. The extra doses announced by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen come on top of 250 million shots the EU has already promised to give to other countries, particularly ones in Africa. Take a look.
Team Europe is investing €1 billion to ramp up mRNA production capacity with Africa. We have already committed to share 250 million doses of vaccine. I can announce today that the Commission will add a new donation of another 200 million doses until the middle of next year. This is an investment in solidarity, and it is an investment also in global health.
She also said Europe had done more than any other region to get vaccine doses to other countries, noting that half of the 1.4 billion vaccines produced on its territory had been exported abroad.
In other news, the Taliban acting Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi thanked the world for pledging hundreds of millions of dollars in emergency aid to Afghanistan and urges the United States to show, quote, heart to the impoverished country. Take a look.
په دې کانفرنس کې له افغانستان سره د $1 ملیارډ په شاوخوا کې مرسته وشوه. نو کومو هیوادونو کومو سازمانونو چې دا مرستې کړي دي موږ له هغو ټولو نه مننه کوو. واقعا دا یو فضایي اقدام و او موږ د دې هرکلی کوو او له هرکلي سره سره آمادګي هم ښیو چې د دې مرستو په رسولو کې اړمنو ته و اسلامي امارت پر همکاري کوي. د موږ رایه او نظر دا ده چې امریکا ډېر لوی هیواد ده، باید لویه حوصله ولري. د افغانستان غوندې غریب هیواد سره باید دا ډول ظالمانه چلند ونشي. موږ له نړیوالو سره مثبت اړیکې غواړو، دوه اړخیزې اړیکې غواړو، ښې اړیکې غواړو. له دوی نه مو هم دا تقاضا ده چې افغانانو باندې دې مزید فشار نه راولي. د فشار پالیسي 20 کاله نتیجه نه ده ورکړې، له دې بعد یې هم نشي ورکولی.
Since the Taliban takeover, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund have halted Afghanistan's access to funding, while the United States has also frozen cash held in its reserves for Kabul. UN Chief Antonio Guterres said Monday he believed aid could be used as leverage with the Islamist hardliners to exact improvements on human rights amid fears of a return to the brutal rule that characterized the first Taliban regime from 1996 to 2001.
In other news, Iran resumed commercial flights to neighboring Afghanistan, where the Taliban took control last month. Now, the semi-official Fars News Agency reported that a charter return flight transported passengers from Tehran to Kabul. It said a second flight from northeastern city of Mashhad left for Kabul too. It was the first such flight between the two countries since the return of the Taliban to power on August 15. The Iranian Civil Aviation Agency had announced the interruption of flights to Kabul on August 16 for security reasons. Previously, Mahan Air had operated 2 flights per week between Mashhad and Kabul. Mahan Air, the second largest Iranian airline after the state-owned Iran Air, has been on the blacklist of entities targeted by U.S. sanctions against Iran since 2011.
Meanwhile, medical workers take swab samples from local residents in the southeastern Chinese city of Xiamen, Fujian province. Now, Fujian reported 50 new locally transmitted cases today, 12 of which were in Xiamen. Fujian, a city of 3.2 million in coastal Fujian province, ordered testing of all residents on Tuesday after Delta variant cases linked to a returnee from Singapore ballooned into a province-wide outbreak. China has now been hit by multiple outbreaks of the highly contagious Delta variant after initially vanquishing the first wave of the coronavirus last year. Authorities said the cluster's suspected patient 0 was a man who had recently returned from Singapore and developed symptoms after completing a 14-day quarantine and initially testing negative for the virus. The man's 12-year-old son and a classmate were among the first patients detected in the cluster last week, shortly after the new school term began.
Meanwhile, UK Health Secretary Sajid Javid tells the House of Commons that frontline health and social care workers, older people, and the clinically vulnerable in Britain will start to receive booster jabs against COVID-19. Here's Kathleen Eusebio for more.
Frontline health and social care workers, older people, and the clinically vulnerable in Britain will start to receive a booster jab against COVID-19 from next week, the government said on Tuesday. Health Minister Sajid Javid told Parliament he had approved a recommendation from advisory body, the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization, to start the program. He also approved a controversial proposal to offer jabs to children aged 12 to 15 as concern mounts about the spread of the virus in schools. Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization Chairman Wei Shen Lim earlier said the program would be introduced to provide extra protection as the winter months approach. COVID infection rates remain stubbornly high in Britain despite a mass vaccination program that has seen some 81% of all adults receive 2 doses of a vaccine. And there remains concern that as the weather turns colder and social mixing increases indoors, COVID and other respiratory diseases such as seasonal flu will run rampant. Javid told lawmakers the government has contingency plans to reintroduce measures including working from home and mask wearing should cases spiral, and put health services under severe pressure. Lim said data indicated a small decrease in COVID vaccine effectiveness after the second dose from a little over 90% to a little under 90%. The most marked decrease was in people over 50, making it prudent to give them and other at-risk groups a third booster shot. He told a news conference the aim was to ensure levels of protection will be higher during the coldest months of the year, in line with a number of other countries. The head of Britain's Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, June Rain, said the Pfizer, Moderna and AstraZeneca vaccines could all be used. Preference was given to Pfizer and Moderna, the latter of which will be given as a half dose. The jabs can be administered at the same time as flu vaccines, she added. England's Deputy Chief Medical Officer Jonathan Van Tam said latest estimates were that Britain's vaccination program had prevented some 24 million cases of COVID and 112,000 deaths. But he warned that winter could still be bumpy at times and there was a need to stay on top of things with a booster jab program as the pandemic was still active. He also told reporters it's better to be preemptive, to prepare and plan for the worst possibilities. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Kathleen Eusebio. We live in interesting times.
Well, News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
Walang hanggan, sabi niya sa'kin. O bakit kay dali niyang limutin?
Hello, this is Mike Maniago. At may tuto pa rin tayong isang letter sender request ngayong linggo, September 19, sa Letters and Music, 1 to 2 p.m. dito lang sa Net25. See you!
Events happen around us all the time. In our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced, eagle news, because we live in interesting times.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights, sharpen your instincts for smart decision-making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Welcome back. Reforms that enable structural transformation and strengthen human capital development are the foundations of a more resilient economy in a post-pandemic world, according to National Economic Development Authority. In his keynote speech during the opening program of the 7th Annual Public Policy Conference, or APPC, hosted by the Philippine Institute of Development Studies, Socioeconomic Planning Secretary Carl Kendrick Chua underscored the significance of the agriculture sector in the country's development story.
Country status. Our reforms in the past 5 years have enabled us to achieve our 2022 goal of lifting 6 million Filipinos out of poverty in 2018, or 4 years ahead of schedule. We entered the year 2020 with prospects of becoming an upper middle income country by the end of that year. However, the Philippines' transition to upper middle income country status was delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic. The good news is that our economic potential remains because of our early reforms, and we are on track to achieving this goal by the end of 2022 or early 2023. Focusing on the theme Reset and Rebuild for a Better Philippines in the post-pandemic world, this year's Development Policy Research Month challenges us to plan for a more resilient economy. To achieve this, we need to focus on our agriculture sector, which is the foundation of any country's structural transformation. A strong, productive agriculture sector provides the foundation for a competitive manufacturing sector and eventually a high-skilled services sector. However, in the Philippines, policy distortions have slowed the growth of agriculture and manufacturing in the last 6 decades. Instead of agriculture productivity paving the way to a labor-intensive manufacturing sector, then a capital-intensive manufacturing sector, and finally a high-skilled services sector, a different path happened. Agricultural productivity remains largely depressed and manufacturing has not grown to potential. As a result, a low-skilled services sector has emerged as a dominant sector in the economy.
Apple CEO Tim Cook strode through a slickly produced video Tuesday to launch a new iPhone with the of the exceptional string of troubles facing his company, including policy reversals, a spyware attack, and legal fights. Cook, from an empty, darkened
Good morning.
raved over upgraded cameras, brighter screens, and new features for some of the Silicon Valley giant's other devices like the iPad. Yet a head-spinning series of problems have occupied the recent public discussion of one of the world's most valuable companies. Due to a long and loud fight over its online app marketplace, a judge ordered Apple last week to allow developers to sidestep its hefty commission on purchases. It has also delayed a plan to scan its customers' devices as part of a child abuse prevention move after privacy advocates howled over the risk of opening a backdoor for government surveillance. And then Monday, it was forced to roll out an urgent fix after cybersecurity researchers found a weakness that allowed Pegasus spyware to infect Apple devices without users so much as clicking a malicious message. That said, Apple still possesses massive reach in the digital world and beyond, and manages to be worth over $2 trillion.
And for the first time today, SpaceX is due to send into orbit a crew made up entirely of complete novices without a professional astronaut on board. The 4 passengers are supposed to embody the opening up of space to everyone, giving the mission its name, Inspiration 4. Take a look.
little bit when you had to...
I am the mission pilot, and it's really special for me to hold that title because I'm going to be the first black female pilot of a spacecraft. There have been 3 black female astronauts that have made it to space, and knowing that I'm going to be the 4th means that I have this opportunity to not only accomplish my dream, but also inspire the next generation of women of color and girls of color and really get them to think about reaching for the stars.
It was just a regular day, and then my mom found a lump which turned out to be cancer. And I never thought I'd be sitting here in front of a rocket about to go off into space. We've really taken things one day at a time from that moment. That's how we've had to get through that really difficult year. But I am so thankful for my journey with cancer because it gave me a love for life.
It recognizes that there are a lot of things that some of which are outside of our control that can have a pretty detrimental impact on our home planet here. And that's why it's so important to make humankind a multiplanetary species. So yeah, I think that there's certainly valid concerns there. It's always worth the discussion.
And we'll be processing right along with you guys through all of this. So I'm excited to take every one of you up with it.
And we look forward to flying you guys tomorrow. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Benji. Thanks for everything.
Finally, in our news, DC, Maryland, and Virginia continue aid from INC State Humanity. Here's Kimi Oraya of our EBC Washington, D.C. Bureau.
It is a day of sharing here today as families in the nation's capital get back in the groove of kids being in school in person. After receiving words of inspiration, enjoying music, and being in the company of neighbors, residents of Washington, D.C. receive a gesture of goodwill from the Iglesia Ni Cristo Church of Christ during what many call very trying times. Residents of the region say being around neighbors in an afternoon of friendship despite the ongoing pandemic is a breath of fresh air.
Pues muy lindo porque imagínense nos están ayudando aquí con estas cosas que necesitamos mucho, pues para mí está bien.
Very nice, very good for the part of the church. And it's a big help for myself because, especially in these times.
For community leaders, saying the pandemic has taken a toll on the lives of people is an understatement. However, a statement they wish to be communicated more to everyone is that coming together during events like this is something that reinforces hope and belongingness.
I mean, it shows that, the whole community, that it's all one, right? We're always here to help. I mean, especially attaching the police department to it. I know sometimes the police department is looked differently, right? And so I want them to know that I don't want them to know that we're just coming when there's trouble. We're there for you no matter what. We want to be a resource, and we want to be a community partner with everybody here.
And it's a testament to the diversity in the community that, that the people of good faith, of goodwill, that are willing to give of themselves are able to do so regardless of race, regardless of background, that we're here to help. And at the same time, there's this component of public service that moments are when we're in the most severe of danger, that we're tested the most, and we're called upon to be the public servants that we're supposed to be. It's more important in times of trouble than ever.
The same way that all communities have been affected throughout the whole world. I mean, the Filipinos here are probably also affected by way of, limited movement, and maybe, I hope not, but perhaps some of they have been affected, maybe their jobs have been affected. Probably those in the entertainment or in the hospitality sector, probably they have seen a decrease in their working hours, which could have affected their income. And surely our nurses and Filipinos who are working in the medical field, they probably have seen an increase in the number of work hours that they have to render to attend to all of the people getting sick because of the pandemic. So it's all probably negative But through activities like this, Aid to Humanity, we can see that there is still kindness among the people here in Washington, D.C. So despite all of these problems that we are facing, we can still see people coming together to help each other out. So there. That's all I can say about this pandemic.
From backpacks filled with school supplies, bags filled with grocery items, and contagious smiles that couldn't be hidden behind masks, today's outreach is not a one-time thing for this church.
So this is our Aid for Humanity. It's our way of reaching out to the community around us. So what we're doing now, we're giving them free food, but we also are going to give them free groceries.
Many of the people really need a helping hand, and we members of the Church of Christ are more than willing to provide not only the spiritual strengthening of our friends, loved ones, and people around us, but most especially we're also here to help them when it comes to their material needs, and we hope that this activity will be able to help them. Yeah.
Pandemic or not, looking after each other, especially during difficult times, is a teaching we all should take to heart. In Washington, D.C., Kimberly Oria, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thanks, Kim.
Kimmy, thank you for your report. We have to keep helping. That's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Pro. It is complete.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles. We'll see you back tomorrow. And we live in interesting times.